Hi, welcome back to the channel. Hope everybody is doing well. First, thanks for watching. A gentle reminder to please like and subscribe if you have not done so. We are well on our way to 3,000 subscriptions. Subscribing and liking really helps to promote the channel, and I can make more videos like this. There seems to be a lot of classic rock and jazz vinyl and videos on YouTube, but I think we need more classical videos like this one. I hope you feel the same. So thanks for your subscription. Today I thought I'd begin at the top, a clash of the titans. Who wins in a shootout of the two indisputably top recommendations for Rimsky-Korsakov's orchestral masterpiece, Scheherazade? The two vinyl recordings in question are with the Chicago Symphony, conducted by Fritz Reiner, and Sir Thomas Beecham conducting his Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. Reiner is on RCA Shaded Dog and Beecham on EMI. Reiner's is from Orchestra Hall in Chicago and Beecham from Kingsway in London. Both were recorded in the late 50s in stereo in arguably the two top recording venues. We did a Streaming the Classics post about Scheherazade at Audiophilia last year. It has our 10 recommendations. I'll link it below. You may already own one. All have wonderful things to recommend them, with the top 4 or 5 very special. However, Reiner and Beecham always seem to be at the top. There are good reasons for that we'll explore. For my little experiment, I'm comparing Ryan Smith's superb Analog Productions 2013 recut of the original Shaded Dog and my first edition EMI His Master's Voice, the famous ASD 251. The EMI record is getting on for 67 years old, but the vinyl is prime, so is the price on Discogs. If you have either of these recordings in a good edition vinyl and you are happy with the sound, you're good to go. Both are superb. But if you are on the fence or maybe want another vinyl copy, stay tuned. I'll try and help you make a decision. So let's get to the fun part, the unscripted part, about these two very beautiful recordings. This is the Reiner Chicago Symphony, Analog Productions pressings from 2013 by the wonderful Ryan Smith at Sterling Sound. This is my original from 1957, I think, or 58. Recorded at Kingsway. This album is as old as I am. That's old. So, let's talk about a couple of things. The first thing is that the piece is a masterpiece. Incredibly difficult to play for all sections. Nobody gets let off. It's a veritable concerto for orchestra. The woodwind parts are hellishly difficult. I've played it a couple of times. I've never conducted it. I think playing it's harder. Percussion parts are very difficult. The trumpet parts are awfully hard, and so are the trombone parts. There's lots of trombone solos, and it's actually a second trombone solo as well in it. Also, the string parts are famous. Lots of auditions, repertoire for auditions, very, very difficult. Not bad for a composer, a part-time composer. Rimsky-Korsakov was a naval officer. That was his main job. And much like his friend BØRRESEN, who was a chemist, they were part-time composers, but he really hit it out of the park with Scheherazade, a masterpiece. Written for a very large orchestra, with his typical brilliant orchestrations. His most famous student was Stravinsky, and he taught Stravinsky a lot about orchestration. So the difference between the orchestras: Chicago Symphony in 1959, very early 1960, was Reiner's orchestra. He had it for a few years. It was also very well trained under Raphael Kubelik before Reiner got there. People always forget that, think it's all Reiner's orchestra. It wasn't. There are a lot of great mono recordings with Kubelik, very famous pictures in exhibition. And it's a great orchestra. But Reiner was a hard taskmaster. He was very well respected by the musicians, but feared by the musicians because he didn't have much of a sense of humor. If you go on YouTube and find Reiner, you'll see the way he just looks at you. Trust me, he got your attention. Thomas Beecham, with his Royal Philharmonic, was completely the opposite. Beecham founded the Royal Philharmonic with his own money. Beecham was from the famous Beecham's Pills family, which is now GlaxoSmithKline, and Big Pharma, as they call it. And when he got bored, or when people got bored with him, he went on to the next orchestra. He founded the London Philharmonic, I think in 1939, And 10 years later, when they got fed up with him, which is typical for conductors, he founded the Royal Philharmonic and got all the best players and made sure they were under his guidance and his contract. They can only play for him. And he got all the best players in London. And by that time, orchestral standards in London were getting higher. So by the time he got the Royal Philharmonic together and took them on a very famous American tour, that orchestra was really cooking with gas. So in some sections, I wouldn't say it's better than the Chicago Symphony, but definitely different. It can certainly hold its own. Some people just consider the Chicago Symphony to run the greatest thing that's ever been heard on record. And sometimes I'm inclined to agree. But Beecham did some marvelous things as well, and the Scheherazade is top amongst them. If you want to know what I used for playback for my reference system, I'll leave that in the notes below. So the recording. They are both wonderful, exceptional, but they are different. The Beecham is very transparent, and it has that beautiful Kingsway bloom mastered on tube equipment, and it's just a gorgeous sounding record. Is it as dynamic as Ryan's recut of The Shaded Dog? Probably not. If you want kaleidoscopic colors, you probably want to go for the Analog Productions recut. There was a recut on classic records, I think, in the mid-90s. I think it was Bernie Grunman's. And there's been a lot of revisionism about Bernie's cuts for classic records on these Shaded Dogs. I think they're wonderful. Some people think they cut really hot. On my system, it doesn't sound that way. But I lost that record a long time ago, I don't know where, in one of my moves. So I wanted to replace it. And this was, the scuttlebutt was about Ryan's 2013 cut on Analog Productions. And it really matches up to its reputation. It's very beautiful. The acoustics in Chicago Orchestra Hall are wonderful. In those days, it was modified like Carnegie, and it lost a little bit of its bloom. But it's a very lovely hall, built like a barrel, shaped like a barrel. So you can the reflections are very interesting when you're listening to it, listening to the recording, especially the percussion in the back left, especially the last movement. So you kind of take your choice. It's if you want that rich, incredibly dynamic with some really solid bass, then you'll go for the Analog Productions. If you want a little bit more natural sounding, and by that I mean in Kingsway, I've never played there. It was closed when I was a student there. It closed actually just as I was studying there. It became a hotel, if you would. It's a very, very transparent recording, again, mastered on tube, cut on tube equipment, recorded on tube equipment, and just sounds absolutely beautiful. But I will say one thing about especially the first movement, the Sea and Sinbad Ship, which is a very beautiful movement. When it gets a little bit loud after the introduction, there's some famous congestion in the mid-range on the Shaded Dog, and it's been ameliorated somewhat by Ryan, but it's still there. It's triple F. The whole orchestra's playing. The ship is sailing out to sea, and everyone's having a good time. But it's a little congested. On the Beecham, you don't get quite the congestion. You don't get quite the volume, but you don't get the thickness. It's a little bit more, as I said, transparent. The second movement is my favorite, the story of the Calendar Prince, with lots of solos. Now this is where both orchestras just excelled. The woodwind section of the Chicago Symphony had some very famous players, including Donald Peck on flute. It sounds fantastic. But the Royal Philharmonic had what they call the royal family of woodwind players. Geoffrey Gilbert, who kind of fathered the French style of flute playing in London, and was a magnificent flute player. And Terence McDonough on oboe, Gwydion Brooke on bassoon, who does some very interesting things with the bassoon solo, but it's unique, but it's beautiful. And they're pretty well evenly matched. Strings, about the same. I was really surprised with the Royal Phil trombone section. I mean, they're obviously very fine players, but you know, the Chicago Symphony had this vaunted trombone section. In fact, I think the gentleman, his principal, is still there. He's just retired. He was there many, many years. I just can't remember his name. I'm sorry about that. However, And they sound fantastic, the Chicago trombone section, but the Royal Philharmonic trombone section matches them. And the second trombone solo, I won't sing it, I was just about to sing it, I won't scare the hell out of you, the cat, is very beautifully done. And the pizzicato in the strings, you get to hear the kind of thumping pizzicato accompanies the clarinet solo and the bassoon solo. Very beautiful on both recordings, but Ryan Smith's strings sound very, very beautiful there. The third movement, about the young prince and princess, it's very lovely, both of them. This is where Reiner actually does some interpretive touches. Beecham plays it absolutely straight, very beautiful, and his flute and clarinet, the colorations that the flute and clarinets do in those runs are just magnificent with the Royal Philharmonic. Chicago Symphony is good too, but they don't match quite the Royal Phil there. But Reiner does some musical touches that you might like. It's here nor there. It doesn't affect the pieces. If you don't want any kind of like interpretive touches, it's lovely. It's nicely done. But it's not like Beecham. Beecham is straight through. The last movement, the fireworks, the fast movement is where all the excitement is and where a lot of people gravitate towards Reiner because, of course, it has that kind of mythic story that it was done in one take, which, trust me, is no big deal. Chicago Symphony played in his sleep. Most orchestras, great orchestras, they just come and put the microphone on, and the red light goes on, and they record the first take through it, and usually they'll take it. It's so good, even the rehearsal. So Chicago Symphony writing it through in one take is no big deal, but it is wonderful, and it's perfectly played. Lots of weight. At the end, the explosions as the boat is crashing onto the rocks. It's exciting. But again, there's that little bit of thickness in the mid-range that's on the original. I don't think Ryan couldn't do much with it. But it's lovely, but it doesn't distort. And the Beecham, again, a little bit more diaphanous, a little more transparent, maybe not quite as powerful, but equally great. The violinist, Sidney Harth for Chicago, excellent, wonderful concertmaster. And the leader, as they call them in England, was Stephen Starrick, who was from Toronto, and Beecham nabbed him and did his Halton Leben with him and Scheherazade. They're both excellent. So, there you go. Which one do you choose? Well, as you can probably tell, it's very challenging to choose one. They're both magnificent. If you have either one in a good pressing, I think you're set. You don't have to worry about the other one. If you have this one and an original, you catch yourself very lucky, in good shape. I feel blessed with this recording. And I am thrilled with this new recut, or 2013 recut on Analog Productions. If you can get an original of this, I've never heard of 1S, but I'm sure it's wonderful. Probably not quite as dynamic, but there's that tube mastering. You may like that even more. I've never heard one. This one, there is a Testament EMI. That's the Testament reissue, the EMIs, that I've heard is very, very good. And it'll be a lot cheaper than this Discogs special that I got. Thank you so much for watching today. Very much appreciated. Please don't forget to subscribe and like. When I commented about I wish there were more classical music videos regarding vinyl especially, I will mention two channels that I very much enjoy and I think you should check out. I'm sure you do already if you like classical music on vinyl. The first one is called The Pressing Matters with Scott Wilson, and I'll link that below. Scott does the most beautiful videos of wonderful, usually vinyl reissues. Not just classical, but does pop ones and jazz too, wonderful ones. But the classical ones are especially good. So check out his channel and subscribe to his. And then, of course, there's also Mark Ward, a very nice English fellow who does videos on a channel called Music on Record. And Mark is a very soft-spoken, kindly English gentleman. I think he has some musical experience singing in choirs and that, and maybe even semi-professionally. And he also plays the gamba, and he brings quite a lot of expertise to his reviews. And his record suggestions on vinyl. Very, very good. So check out those two channels. And thanks again for watching. I will see you in the next video.